All right. Here we are again. We're in the Exit Your Way Business Roundtable. With me today, I've got Andrew Deustsch and Andrew Cross, and we're going to be talking a little bit about the importance of marketing, strategic marketing in the B2B world. So, first of all, Andrew Deustsch, great to have you on today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
As you said, my name's Andrew Deustsch. I run a company called Fangle Technology. We're a global trade consultancy. We provide marketing and sales services for a variety of industries, mostly in that B2B space that we're going to be talking about today.
All right, cool. So Andrew Cross, a partner in Exit Your Way. He's going to be helping us today. Andrew, introduce yourself too.
Yeah. Thanks, Damon. Well, Exit Your Way, I'm a co-founder of Exit Your Way, and we help clients when it's time to start thinking about preparing and selling their companies and getting out. So it's kind of unusual. People don't think about that up front, but it's we work with our clients too so that they can maximize the value of their company on their exit.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah. Andrew Cross and I have known each other for many, many years, and Exit Your Way is a fun thing. It is a business, but it is a lot of fun for us to help those business owners. That's for sure.
That's right.
Good. Well, Andrew Deustsch. So what should I say? A1 and A2, or how should I refer to you guys? I think it's going to be so.
I'll take Drew on this one if you'd like.
You'll be Drew, and you'll be Andrew and Drew. Okay. So Andrew, you've been in this B2B sales and marketing a long time. And, it's a funny thing because people 10 years ago, or maybe longer, because I'm kind of old, but it didn't really even think about marketing. They just thought, put some salespeople out on the road and let them go. So kind of give us a little bit about how that's changed over time and how it's really becoming almost a necessity.
Well, prior to the ease of getting to the world market that now exists with the internet, with email, with web presence, LinkedIn, all of those companies that wanted to go global, especially American companies for the most part, either made large investments in trying to make contacts to get into those other foreign markets, or fell into it. The old trade show method. A guy would come up and say, I'm the number one in your market, in my country, let's do business. So with the ease and the changes that happened, where now you can actually draw more business to you, it's become more and more important for the marketing. And there was a time where basically a trade book, like a Thomson Register or one of the global trade from the Department of State, would allow companies to sort of list themselves, and hopefully someone who could communicate in English would find it, fax, call, or otherwise.
Yeah.
Guys, back in my early days of international trade, you'd spend hours and hours going through those guides for different countries trying to find your leads. And now it's simplified. But because it's simplified, there's a lot more competition to that market.
Okay.
So it's really, the need for it has changed. Also, as products become more plentiful and there's more players in the market, a good marketing program to really differentiate what you do and where those benefits are to the customer who wants to do business with you matters more than ever.
Yeah. That's interesting. So yeah, I've never really tried to sell much outside of basically out of North America. It's always been the other way, and Alibaba, changed that many years ago for people looking for things offshore. But not globally as much as it did from China and other places like that. But
I would say probably for the first half of my career, the goal of my business was to help American companies find distribution and sales in other markets. Part of it was helping with sourcing in some items that couldn't be had here, and finding ways for those to be found and sourced by U.S. companies and helping. But most of the beginning of my career was helping American companies substantially grow their footprint in Latin America at first, and then globally throughout Asia, China, especially selling American goods to places like that, the European market, the Australian market.
So what are some of this? I mean, you and I have talked about it. You were in South America quite a bit, weren't you?
Yeah, I lived in Brazil for about 10 years,
All
where
right.
I operated my consulting business was sort of born there. And
Yeah.
then I brought it back to the US when I came back in 2004 or 2003.
What kind of products were trying to help people sell into Brazil?
A big portion of that business was the industrial packaging world, plastic strapping, packaging machinery, equipment, adhesive tapes, equipment for processing and converting adhesives, and those types of products was probably 60-70%. But we also did projects for American-made construction materials, things like under-sink garbage disposals.
Mm-hmm.
We did projects in industrial and commercial painting machinery, airless sprayers for being able to increase productivity in civil construction.
Uh-huh.
A variety of different projects over the years, dozens of different clients at different times.
Wow, that's cool. So what do you think the biggest challenge was in the marketing?
Well, the original, to not go too deep into it, but most American companies that I found, and Canadian companies also, the way that they started doing international trade was, first, where do they speak our language? Because that's easy. And then where after that can people contact us? How do we get them to find us? And, is it at a trade show somebody comes up? But the strategies were all faulty because a lot of these guys would come and tell you, oh yeah, I'm the dominant guy in my country. And they would sign contracts and get involved with these companies, not realizing it's a guy in his basement in his country wanting to have a business. And now you're tied in with that guy when the real guy finds you and says, hey, you should be selling through us. We actually do have a presence in our country. So a big portion of being successful in that market back in those days, and now it's easier to do because you can really find things out,
yeah,
is that whole investigative side of the marketing process and the sales process. Who am I dealing with? I won't say the name of the country, but there's a specific country where you'll go to a trade show and within a day's time, you will meet 7 number one companies in your field in that country as a minimum. Every person will tell you they're number one. And it's your job as a professional to figure out which one. So now when you bring that back to the US market in terms of that B2B, people growing globally and on a smaller scale trying to expand their presence in the US, the marketing capacity that has to happen now, and now we have the resources we didn't have, is to really understand that market space. Who are the potential customers within your space? How do you differentiate yourself and your offering in terms of the benefit that it has to the market so that you can then evaluate which of those leads that are out there, which of those silos, places that you can sell to, depending how niche your product is, and start to develop a prospecting, lead generation, and more importantly, lead nurturing system to be able to go after that market.
Mm-hmm. I have to imagine that trying to sell offshore like that, it has to be a fairly large company doing that.
It doesn't.
Really?
It doesn't. Most of the guys that were initially successful in the overseas market were not huge. We competed directly against these behemoths, especially in the plastic strapping industry, which I was involved with for many, many years. And we outplayed all of the major guys because they didn't understand the need to really have those partnerships with the right people in those markets and the creativity and the flexibility to adapt what they were doing. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
Before Venezuela became what it is now, we had a potential customer there who was an American company who manufactured glass bottles for the beverage industry. And those bottles get made, they get strapped in 2-meter-high pallets and shipped to the locations. If someone opened the back of a truck and that pallet wasn't strapped properly, you would have a glass bottle waterfall that could kill somebody. Yeah. So it had to be good. And there were 2 multinationals that basically owned that business from the US. We had a distributor, and because of the way distribution works, you import a product, there's all these value add and all these other taxes that go on. Then you add your margin and sell it. This distributor did not have the ability to get that business. We had the better product, but because of price, that the value of all the things that you could bring didn't matter because we were so much more expensive.
Yeah.
But we created what I've always called hybrid distribution. We turned all of our distributors also into trained representatives and equipment salesmen. So now that distributor would go back to that bottle manufacturer and say, we can provide you direct from the factory, the product. You are the importer of record. There's no additional taxes added to it. And all of a sudden, now we were the most competitive price-wise, and we had the better offering. Within a year and a half, it led to the largest capital equipment sale I had made up till that point. It was about a $2 million capital equipment sale, replacing all of their strapping machinery on the line with high pressure compression and all of these extra features, because we had the ability to be more creative than the big behemoths that just wanted to sell the way they sell to everybody.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We completely caught them by surprise. And of course, in that market, once you've got your equipment in, their strap won't work in our machine. So it became a great deal until 3 months after the installation, the Venezuelan military showed up and nationalized the plant. Which is a whole other story we don't need to go into today.
Yeah. So Andrew Cross, you spent a fair amount in many different countries working. So what were your experiences just being in those countries, trying to buy industrial products and source things?
Yeah. Quite a broad experience doing that. I think, and I also, was always on the small company side. So I think there was some advantages to that, provided our customer was a tier one, was a prime contractors working for them. And one of the reasons we differentiated ourselves was we were able to get things done like that, like what Andrew's suggesting, and come in and understand the system at a local level, and and be able to maybe cut out some of the inefficiencies in there. Whereas I was doing stuff with Ford Motor Company, and they relied on us to do that because they were incapable.
Company to get things done that they couldn't.
One of the reasons I like, kind of where I went into this business too. I'm a small company guy. I like that. For me personally, it's just more fun and rewarding. And you get to do different things every day. I think that's where all the innovation comes from. You're more nimble, and and you can be reactive to situations like that too. So, but then again, you're vulnerable to the government come over and nationalize your plant too.
But when you take that to the U.S. market, again, that argument between the large multinationals and the small businesses and medium-sized businesses, I've done both, and I much prefer working for the smaller scale, because there's so much more that you can do in terms of the marketing of a company, and really being able to understand especially in the B2B space, which people neglect, is what is the true benefit that you're providing to that company, the buyer, the people in that channel that you're selling into. And so many industrial companies, B2B companies, are always focusing on the features that their products have. And I think it's a huge mistake that happens in the US market. People buy the benefits, and those features are just to prove that the benefit exists. The other thing that happens a lot in the US market, which is where we thrive, is people that are out selling what in poker you'd call the table stakes. Our products are made of steel. They're made in America. They meet NC standards. We have ISO. All of those things that people are out promoting about their business are what everybody has, and are just sort of what you need to be in business. Well, what do you do that they don't do? A recent company that I did work with, when we did the study to find out what's the reason that people want to do business with these guys, because everything they're bragging about is table stakes. And when we did the research, number one, when we talked to their top 20 and 20 customers who quit and no longer did business with them and tried to get the data. Number one reason people did business with this company, they answered the phone. Number two, they have this flexible manufacturing process that if we screw up and we run out, or we get a big surge and we need product, they can get it in line. The competitors, 2-3 weeks, a month.
Yeah.
Number three on the list. All of these things were all customer experience reasons to do business with these guys. None of them had to do with the quality of the product, because that had to be to meet the standard for ODOT and other reasons. It was because they knew how to provide the benefit of feeling like you're an important client and we're here to fix it. Whether you goof or we goof, we're going to make it right, and we've proven it. Where the other ones, you'd talk and they say, well, those guys, I haven't talked to my salesman in 3 months.
Yeah. I think too that and just the way the business landscape was going with the bigger and bigger companies got, their supply chains were being reduced, and their suppliers were consolidated and becoming as big as the prime, and pretty hard to get them. But they're so big, and you got two big guys looking at each other and say, "Can you do that?" And my competitors were multinationals and big companies were going, "No, we're not doing that. We don't do that." But you know what? That's our role. We're the guys that'll do anything.
Yeah. I'm sure you've noticed, the bigger the company, sometimes the more difficult they make it to do business with them.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah, and that's a major portion that the marketing team needs to be involved with, because if that's the reputation for the brand, it doesn't matter what the company does. People will believe that perceived notion that that's who they are as a company.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then the other factor to what we're talking about in terms of that marketing component is really understanding who are your competitors and who are your customers. When I was involved in the adhesives industry, adhesive tapes for high performance, people would say, well, who are your competitors? Well, they were these other tape guys. There was, no, they're not. They're out there. The competitors for high power adhesives are mechanical fasteners.
Yeah.
They're liquid putties, glues, all of those other things are the competition. So if you want to go to market and play price games and try to get the other guy who's going after the same customer, or do you want to innovate and come up with something that completely changes the market with an adhesive tape solution that bonds immediately, saves hours of labor, and all of those types of things? That's that part of marketing too that gets missed. And then the end customers of, are you going to play in the same pools as everyone else, or are there other silos that you should be selling to you never even thought of?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah.
Well, Andrew, go ahead. Sorry.
That comes back to listening, and that's the other thing too that the small businesses could do. They will get in there and listen to the customer, because that's where the opportunities are.
Yeah.
And what is it that, well, if that part's too expensive, there's another way to skin that cat. And that's the mindset that's what that's not where you live, and you get known for that. That's your brand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even like me, I started out my career in injection molding, and it was funny because the injection molding company, we had a lot of engineers, and people go, why do you have, they're tooling engineers? No, we're design engineers. Why? The first things we would do, we worked with companies like Toshiba and Philips and Puridenzo and the big guys. We would take their plastic parts and consolidate 2 or 3. We would redesign their stuff. Yep. And then on top of it, when you started talking about the other things you were talking about, answering the phone and being nimble, we would run 24/7. We would run just in time. I can remember when I was running a facility in Tennessee that we would load up aircraft at the local airport, flying parts into Mexico because they needed them fast. And how many big companies would do that kind of stuff?
Absolutely.
It's the first place I remember. Coletta, you remember the drag race name Coletta? They made all their money in freight like that. We used to rent their jets to fly to Mexico. It's amazing. But the kind of customer satisfaction that creates, knowing that, hey, if you call me today, I can have parts for you in Mexico tomorrow.
Yep.
That's something that you just don't see a big company do.
Yeah. It's interesting, Damon. You're hitting on the first conversation we typically have at Fangled with any new B2B customer. And that is, how do you create a program within your company where every employee understands that every person that they touch, whether it's a current customer, future customer, or even outside the business, what is your strategy to convert every one of those into an advocate for your brand? And it's those types of things that matter. It's something the light just shut off here in my.
Oh wow!
I think a bulb burned out.
Yeah, but that's right. I mean, you really have to be thinking about that because at the end of the day, right? You were selling tape and you were selling plastic strapping, which is they're commodity items in most people's eyes.
Yep.
When you play around the edges with what you can do in customer service and design and other places that you can be nimble as a small company, that's where you create your value.
Yeah, let's talk about strap for a second. There's a great example of this. So there's a small town in Brazil called Santa Cruz where almost all of Brazil's tobacco, not cigarettes, but the actual tobacco is processed and it's boxed in these 150 kilo pallets that then go to the cigarette manufacturers. And they have these high-speed strapping machines, and they were buying strap that was made in Brazil that was less expensive per meter than the American strap. So how do you it's a commodity. It's not a commodity. We did the math. How many failures do you have in the strapping machines with that strap? And what does it cost you for every minute that your production line is down trying to reset the machine for the strap? So when we examined that, we discovered our strap had I may get the number wrong, but it was like 0.0001% failure rate.
Yeah.
In other words, for every 2 coils of strap in the machine, they might have a failure. For every 2. The competitor was 1%. When you added up how much production time they were losing and what that entire team cost while they were waiting for the strapping machine to come up, that right there got rid of the whole question of commodity because we had a benefit. You're not going to be watching your employees stare at the walls while your machines are being constantly updated because the strap doesn't work. Number 2, then, we discovered through research what they call temporary admission. So if a company could prove that they were bringing a material into Brazil, using it and shipping it back out of the country, they then could petition for those dollars back for the import taxes. And it turned out with that, we were actually cheaper than the domestic product. It became an annual sale of somewhere between, depending on the price of strapping during that year, between $500,000 and $750,000 a year in just one of the tobacco companies.
Wow.
But it was, how do you stop and listen and research and understand what is the benefit, what is the problem that you're trying to solve, not what's the commodity I can try to outprice my competitor with.
Yeah. You won't win price. I mean, you can get the whole total package. You can get the price right, but it's hard just on a pen to pen price. Somebody that's making 10 billion of them is going to be a little bit cheaper than somebody that's making 1 million of them. That's for sure.
Yep. And if you want to play in that, the budget market and constantly try to figure out how you can survive on tiny margins, that's fine. That isn't something that I would ever want to be involved with. I think discounting. I had a conversation today with a strategic pricing fellow who's a good friend of mine, and they call it the creep. That as soon as people start authorizing slight discounts here and there, it's really easy to lower prices. It doesn't take much effort. Regaining your margin back where you were before when you realize that you're causing huge damage to the finances of your company. That's the tricky part.
Yeah, it is. It is. I've been fortunate enough in a couple instances where you have to go through those price reductions because the market demands it.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other side of it, been able to do operational changes that where say you've got to go a 5% reduction, you find 10% on the inside, and then you're okay. And Andrew, I was leading into that because that's a world that you lived in for a long time.
Yeah, all better now though.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's normal deal for you.
And it's tough in the environment when the clients are so big too that they really can demand those kind of things. Whether and they're not enlightened like they portray themselves to be that they're helping their supply base, but they do destroy a lot of their supply bases, which is a short-term view. But even in a commodity business, like Andrew is telling us here, you're creating value. You have to keep listening and continually search for those value drivers. And another benefit of being small, you'd be able to pivot and get the hell out of there if it's not, some of them you're not going to win. And you have to be smart about that to say, okay, it's time to get in another line of business or find a different revenue stream.
Yeah.
When you talk to like enterprise software guys that sell ERP and those kinds of things, their mantra is there's no second place in sales. And it's true. A guy buys an ERP for a manufacturing facility, it's going to be a long time before they buy another one.
Oh, yeah.
But in this B2B space, outside of that, second place isn't always second place because it gives you the opportunity to prove yourself. So like, for example, in the steel drum industry, we had many customers where a competitor had 80% and we had 20 until the competitor showed and proved who they really were and couldn't supply. And then we were 50-50 and then we were 80 and they were 20.
Yeah.
So it changes. And again, it goes back to what are you doing to be a brand advocate and how are you servicing? In the old days, someone would go, those jerks only give us 20% of the business. I'm not going to bother with them. Nowadays, intelligent marketers go, wait a minute. I've got, as one of my closest friends always says, the camel's nose under the tent. You know what happens after a camel gets his nose under the tent? The rest of the camel follows.
Ah.
So what are you gonna do? You got your nose under the tent. You're gonna do everything you possibly can to service that customer the way you service customers. No better, no worse.
Yeah.
Because that's the strategy. And eventually, the whole camel's gonna make it under the tent, and it's gonna be your customer. Very important. And that, again, is that whole function of B2B marketing that's overlooked. I got a customer, I delivered the stuff, we're fine.
Yeah.
It doesn't work in today's market.
Yeah. Well, and Andrew, we've run into this before where we're in a business and the owner wants to sell it and you look at the revenue and it comes, you got 80% from one client or one customer. Explain that a little bit and how not only on your, from just operating your business standpoint, what's it look like when you go to sell a business like that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a risk. That's an enormous risk. I mean, and one of the benefits of being in my business is, really the real customer in our business is the buyer of the business. And so the business owner is not really thinking about that customer. It's thinking about the customer they're selling their products or services to. Yeah. And they have to really kind of think about that too. But, if there's a relationship there, and the guy wants to sell his company and 85% of his business is with one customer, there's an enormous amount of risk for a buyer to come in because once the owner's gone, it's difficult to understand what that relationship is, why that big customer is, and but you could buy the business in the next week, you lose that customer, and you're down the toilet. So it is a value factor as well on pricing, but it's a funny business because it isn't like hey, these kind of things just means you're not going to get as much for your business. No, these kind of things, it's zero sum. This means this probably is going to stop you from even being able to sell your business.
Yeah, that's I think what most people don't realize is that as Andrew was talking about having a big customer and being 80% of the market, if you're getting ready to sell your business, you don't want to be 80% of the market because the buyer, and especially if it's 80% is of your business is with one customer and you're 80% of the total market, then it's like a double whammy because the new buyer is not going to see any room for growth or real for growth.
That becomes a difficult situation, I think, too, with, also coming out of the automotive industry, this was a very familiar pattern. And now it's happening more in e-com and in tech businesses as well. But when your customer is scaling up and, you're a supplier, it's pretty hard to stop them from being 85% of your business. Because if they're going cash all out, in growth mode, the auto industry does that. And then on the bad side of it is when it's done, and then it closes all up, and you're shutting down and laying off people, and everybody reads about that in the news. But it's a discipline. It's difficult to do, but it's the thing that businesses need to do, all the time, because yes, that upswing won't last forever. And when they do pull back, you need to have a diverse customer base that you can ride through if you want to be around for the next rise up in those cyclical industries.
Yeah. What you were talking about, Andrew, with the global marketing, I think most people don't understand that they could be looking at a global market for their products or their services, and it's not even a consideration for them.
No.
And I mean, even as simple as here where I live, you could be selling into Canada pretty easy, and you don't even think about it. And it might be a better market for you than it is in the United States, and it might be a more lucrative market for you than it is the United States.
Yeah.
And it's an option, because when you start to tap into that, you open another huge potential. And as you said, it's Andrew Cross. It is about that diversification, and when you have that, it just makes your business more valuable.
I've even come across major producers that look at the foreign market as, where do I sell my excess capacity? They don't even look at it as a strategic option for growth. It's, we could run our equipment a little bit longer and keep the lights on by getting overseas, and very strange strategies like that. Going back to what Andrew was just saying, we do at Fangold, we do quite a bit of work. What I always joke is being, the PE detective. Mm-hmm. Lots of private equity people looking to acquire companies, as well as the work that, with exit companies that are looking to sell and want to position themselves in that. When we go in and do investigative work for private equity groups to really understand the intangibles, the typical spreadsheet, typical financial will show you, for example, that 80% of the business is with one customer. When it doesn't show it that clearly, there's certain ways that we've been able to go in. And an example, there's a company that was buying their biggest customer was buying a specific type of a stamping that they manufactured, and it was about 60% of their total business. And there was another that was buying something similar. And as we did the investigative work, we discovered that there was another company out there with an alternative that had patents to it, was less expensive, worked better, and was coming to market within 30 or 40 days. So we of course made the recommendation, hey, this is a dangerous buy, because if this happens, not only are you going to lose, but you're going to lose more than 60-70% of your business.
Yeah.
And guess what? They backed out. Another group bought them. That's exactly what happened. So that, having that mix and having those other outlets and other silos, the old not too many eggs in one basket, really are an important part of the strategic plan for any small business.
Yeah.
And again, having a very strong, and I say lead generation, but first I look at a market generation. Where are all of the silos that you could be selling into? What are all the potential applications for what you have, and who are they? And then do a study, look at the attractiveness of each of those markets. How hard are they to get in? What are the competitive advantages? What are the benefits we offer? Do we know the people? All of those things, and build a strategy so that you're constantly trying to widen that basket. You certainly don't want to walk away from your customer who you're doing 80% or 60% or whatever it is your business, but you certainly can enhance it in new areas so that when things happen, you're better protected. It's very much a part of that risk management from a marketing perspective going forward.
Well, and like Andrew Cross and I, in the businesses that we're advising, we're usually going to take that single customer that's 80%, and we're going to try to grow the rest of the business so that 80% becomes 40% over time. And that's really the best thing to do, because then you do diversification by growth, which is actually a better thing, because you've got a little stronger company in the end.
Yeah.
And doing that. So
yeah.
The one thing that I was going to ask about is, you guys now obviously been in this more than a couple of years. The marketing is something that guys people that have been in business for a long time kind of still look at and go, marketing, that's that stuff that those tech companies do. And there's just you just walk down the street, and there's a lot of companies that still say, how do you do business? Say, oh, word of mouth. And, marketing is marketing becoming a necessity in your minds?
It's always been a necessity. Word of mouth is a modality of marketing. And word of mouth comes from that whole concept of every person you ever touch should become an advocate for your brand.
Mm-hmm.
But there's many, many other ways of marketing to leverage and grow your business than word of mouth. If you're only doing business by word of mouth and you're satisfied with the size of your company, you don't want to grow, I'm not your guy. It's and there are people like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I've come across it. But if someone is looking to get beyond those word of mouth people, a strategic marketing campaign where they look at where is an area that we're not currently doing business or an area that we would like to do more business. Who are the players? What are their needs? What can we do to be better than everybody else in that space? And how do we communicate that?
Yeah.
And then you pull out the bag of tricks. And the bag of tricks gets bigger and bigger with guys like Andrew and I that have been around for a long time. And it's not just social media. It's not just advertising. It's not just trade shows. It's a strategic use of all of those modalities with a message that rings true, with qualified people who know how to bring that to the market.
Yeah. I think, look at the big boys and see how they operate. But, my experience with small businesses over the years is they usually have, they combine sales and marketing. They think it's the same thing.
Yep.
And I go in there and they've got one manager or one, C-level person working in it that does sales and marketing. Marketing supports sales. It provides the tools for them. Yep. It's a separate function. And you need to invest in that. And the companies don't, it shows. But you're absolutely right. The marketing allows the sales is tactical, allows the sales team to go out and execute. But if the marketing's not there to support them, it's not going to happen. And there are plenty of business owners that are satisfied with that, because in the old days, they just put out a shingle and it went open, and then the business came to them. And it doesn't happen that way anymore. And you're right. Everybody, even the person down who's delivering the product in the truck, is a salesperson for your company.
Yeah.
And if they aren't on board and understand, the company's vision and mantra, and is able to really understand what we do, and get it out there, you're hurting yourself, and you're not going to be able to sell your company.
I even take that to the vendors that you use. An example, and it's a horrible example, but a company that I worked for had all of these different outside trucking companies that would do the deliveries for them because they were selling full truckloads. And they found out one of the drivers from one of the companies was peeing on the wheel of a tire in the parking lot of a customer.
Oh, God.
That affects your brand.
Oh, yeah.
You have to have standards, and the guys that go out and deliver your product have to. I mean, could you imagine having to take that phone call? And he's not, you don't respond. Well, he's not my employee. There's nothing I can do about it.
No.
That is a serious issue. This is really embarrassing. We're going to make it right. And then we're going to get and have that company get back in touch with you and guarantee that's not going to happen again, because that's not our brand.
Yeah. This is.
But
and I just
marketing is spending the time with them to understand what they have ideas too about how to market and brand a company, and to really get them on the same page. But if you don't give them the tools they need to do their jobs, morale goes down, and do things like that. They're not proud of, they have to have a reason to have some pride in what they're doing. And, then that's a good sign that somebody who's has the vision of the company and runs that isn't talking to those people.
Yeah. The marketing team is the one that knows that when the company goofs, what a great opportunity to prove yourself.
Yeah.
And you're putting the quality and improve your brand. But the other, we're talking about that's that difference between sales and marketing. There has to be a synergy between the two, because at the end of the day, the salespeople have a wealth of information the marketing team needs from their interaction with customers. When we implement CRMs for our customers, it's always salesman focused, but in a way that it feeds the best information to the marketing team to be able to support sales. But it's the joke in the industry is always the marketing team can create the greatest campaigns no salesman could ever implement.
Yeah.
And the salespeople will try to do everything that they can that the marketing team can't support. So in a quality organization, those two come together. I've walked into companies where they introduced me to their vice president of marketing, and he's the guy I'm going to be interacting with, and it turns out he's a graphic designer. And graphic design is a modality, and I'm fortunate that in my team that I use, I've got some of the best graphic designers in the world. Some that have some marketing skills, but they're not the guys, if they're just a graphic designer, who should be contemplating your strategic go-to-market strategy, who understands all of the modalities of where you need to be, and that isn't their function.
Yeah.
It's the same reason you don't have engineers out selling if you're not selling a technical product.
Yeah.
A different skill set.
That's for sure. So one of the things that people talk about a lot now is marketing and the emotional connection.
Absolutely.
Do you think that's always been there? Or do you think that's something that we're just talking about it more now, or what?
I think some people have gotten really lucky over the years.
Yeah.
And connected without knowing that's what they were doing. One of my favorite marketing guys that I work with all the time on projects, he'll tell you it's all about the heart and soul, the mind and soul of the customer, whether it's B2B, B2C, or otherwise. More so, just like I always say, please stop telling me your features and let's talk about the benefits. If you're not capturing what's intrinsically in it for me, not just what's going in my pocket, but what's in it for me to do business with you. I've even seen where you're dealing with a lazy buyer who shouldn't even be in that role, but through proper salesmanship, you benefit that guy because he doesn't have to do his job. You do it for him.
Yeah, you make it easy.
And you've captured what it is that he's looking for.
Yeah.
And on the other side, other things. I'm sorry, you.
Yeah, no, I think 100%. And, in the business of selling a business, and I think, a lot of people run in through that and go through that process and run into it, that they think it's all about, how much is the company making? It's all about the financials. What's how are we going to finance this? Does it make any sense? Yeah, that's important. But at the end of the day, that's probably you take the top 10 reasons why people buy a business, and it's probably number 4 or 5 is whether it works out, pencils out financially. The major reasons are, what am I, is it a good company? What's the culture? What are the people like? Is this something I'm going to want to do every day? Will I get out of bed and go to work excited about what I'm doing? It definitely is 100%. So when we sell a company, we spend a lot of time understanding the story.
Yeah.
How did they get there? What obstacles did they make? Good, bad. How'd you learn how to do that? Where'd you get the idea for the product? Tell that story. What's your life like? What do you do? Because if you can tell that story, which is what it is,
that's a really good point. It's a really good point, because you're not telling somebody that they're gonna, they're buying a new set of tires for their 4-wheel drive or their performance car that's going to make their car work better or something like that. You're trying to tell them that, hey, you're going to buy something that's bigger than the houses you've purchased, the cars you've purchased, and everything else you've probably purchased in your life times a few times. And yeah, you're dedicating years to it. So you probably have to have an emotional connection to do that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's interesting too, the core, when you get called in as a consultant, as a marketing consultant to a company, it's always, we want to grow the business, which is meaningless. What do you mean you want to grow the business? Do you want to grow your margins? Do you want more sales? Do you want bigger footprint? Do you want market share? What is it that you want to grow? Because again, people talk in terms, it's like when a salesman comes back, you're the sales manager. I've got a huge deal coming. Really? Is it your huge or my huge? Is there a number attached to it? So like, for example, if I was dealing with a capital goods company, and their interest was how do we shorten the purchase process? In other words, the time to market. Today, when we meet someone, we typically don't close a deal for 12 to 14 months. What can we do in our marketing to speed up that process? That was the goal.
Yeah.
Their idea was that they could grow their business more if they were able to turn, and then we built a strategy around that.
Yeah.
Similar, another capital goods company that I was with was, how do we know all of the players? We're so busy, we don't know everyone in the market space who could potentially be buying our equipment. Can we do a global study in, say, the top 100 GDP countries in the world? And it was 100, by the way. I don't know how you do top 100, but see who are the potential buyers there, so that we can set up and communicate to all of them and nurture those leads for as long as it takes until they come on board. Two very similar companies, actually in the similar market space, with two totally different sets of goals to grow their business.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, it's good, guys. It's great conversation. Always interesting to talk about marketing, because it is kind of it can make such a difference. I mean, when you look at brands and you take things like Red Bull, or just pick one that everybody knows, Nike, Red Bull, just any of these real high-end brands or popular brands, whatever you want to call them. There's a lot of attention paid to it, and I think that most businesses miss out on the opportunities that they have to use marketing to get at least the brand recognition and the awareness and the goodwill that they could create with it if they've got good products and services.
Yeah. So, an interesting caveat to that, and I'm not going to say the name of the brand, but when I was in a competitive space and go to talk to someone who was buying from the incumbent, the most common thing that was said to me was, no buyer ever lost his job by buying that brand. Even though they're more expensive, they're hard to do business with, all of those things, nobody ever lost their job buying from them.
Yeah.
Buying from you's a risk. Prove to me it's not.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the way to do it. That is,
you give it to them.
Yeah.
Yeah. We won.
And then, you give it to them, and then wait and see.
Yeah. Yep. Good.
Yeah.
Well, guys, it's awesome again to get you on and talk a little bit about this. And as usual, we'll put Andrew, we'll put your contact details in there, and we'll have our LinkedIn and all our website stuff in the live stream comments. But hey, thanks again for being on, guys, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
Really a pleasure. Thanks so much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thanks.